Hello and welcome to Center for Victory's podcast of Your Best Day Yet. At Center for Victory, we're here to help unlock, reinforce, and enrich relationships through personal and professional development. I'm Zack DelTurco. I'm an executive consultant here at Center for Victory, and today we have the one and only Eric Guy, Chief Victory Officer, and we're going to be spending a little bit of time talking about Eric's book, The Life of Victory. And I think this is really, hearing your story and reading this book, this is kind of where your company came from.
Absolutely.
And I wanted to share with the audience, because this is a book that will change your life, I promise you. If you read this, it's a book worth reading. It takes a day to read it, but it has so many powerful principles in this book that I believe that can change and transform your life. So, Eric, I just want to talk to you, ask this first question. So, if somebody hasn't read your book, and they're thinking about reading your book, why did you write this book? What's your why?
One, it has to do around my whole story, right? And this whole idea of waking up one day and not wanting to be, just not wanting to be angry, not wanting to be happy.
Yeah.
How do you get success? How do you go about it? But the why around the book is because I know there's others out there that are in the same boat that I was. We were just talking about it before we started recording. It's like, man, I was like a hot mess. I'm just such a hot mess. Looking at my son who's helping us with the recording of this, and I'm just thinking, man, like, I'm nowhere working. I was just like, the trouble I was getting in, and the trouble that I didn't get in, just didn't get caught doing, and the near-death experiences and all that thing. I mean, I feel like there's a lot of people out there that need to hear it. Mm-hmm. So there's info that needs to be out there that needs to be encouraged. I don't think it's difficult now, knowing what I know now, listening to people, how do I get success? How do I be successful? How do I be happy? How do I have a family, a home, friends, all this and all that? It's really not as difficult. We just need to get out of that old way of thinking, and that's kind of my big why about it. But really, to help people achieve all they can be. I mean, a lot of people have much more talent and giftedness than I do.
Yeah.
Right. And doing that and seeing that come out in them is one of the reasons that why we're around, why Center for Victory is around. And the other thing, the last point there is just, I needed to do it because it was meaning write the book, because it was one of the things that I feared the most. I mean, being able to not read that well going into college, but the thing I had in my mind is, why would anybody want to, even though I had been speaking, I've been speaking, I don't know, almost before I wrote the book, I've been speaking 10 or 12 years before I wrote the book, even longer than that. And really overcoming the belief my whole life that I had something worthy to say, and that people would listen. So that was the other reason. Yeah.
And, kind of focusing on that idea of, here's where you were and here's where you're now.
Yeah.
I look at your life now, and I would have never guessed that you had that background.
Right.
What kind of words of encouragement can you give somebody who might feel as though they're in that ditch and they can't see that light at the end of the tunnel? Because in that moment you're probably thinking, is there even a way out? Like, what are some things that you could say?
Well, you have to want to change. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's the biggest thing that we work on. That with our clients. That from your own personal experience as well. People want to change. You have to want to change. You just can't get up one day and do it, and not want to. And then you can't quit. I mean, it does take discipline. There's going to be days where you get down. And you have to be, as that first chapter in the book says, you have to be a little crazy, because what you're doing is you're doing something that's not mediocre anymore. You have to want to be better and get out of that kind of mediocre mindset and want to be happy. I mean, people talk, I want to be successful, I want to be successful. But then we don't really plan what that looks like for us. Mm-hmm. Right? Success to me is discretionary time. And I learned that a long time ago. What can I do with my time? Do I have because time is limited.
Yeah.
Right? I want that time to do the things that I want to do, but you have to have a plan for what success looks like. Many people can tell you what they don't want. A few people can tell you what they do want.
They do want. That's good. That's like really good. And what would you say your number one contribution was to that success from going from there to here?
I think really the self-realization of the self-realization of, look, I want to get better, right?
Mm-hmm.
I want to get better, and then the progression after that, making that decision of following the path of getting better. What does it take?
Yeah.
So looking at all the research that I've done in the past 20 plus years, even when I was still in college, because that's when it was like the epiphany said, like, I just don't want to be miserable anymore. And really going through that whole process of becoming more self-aware, the process of self-awareness, but also the process of getting to know myself, for lack of a better term, getting to love myself and getting some direction from me, not from the world.
Yeah.
And just not getting mediocre. I think one of the things that we fall trapped into in our society is mediocre is kind of okay in our culture.
Yeah.
Like, you can have a nice house, nice cars, you can look like you have a nice family and still be mediocre.
Yeah.
And I think that's the pitfall that we fall into a lot of times is really, well, I just settle for, I guess I would call it it's not necessarily economic, it's more of a mindset. It's more of a middle class mindset where it's mediocre, where it's like, okay, I'm just going to settle because everybody else has this. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people have so much more talent than that. And I'm not just talking about house and cars and things like that. What I'm talking about is mindset. How do you get out of that mindset and just do that little bit extra that's going to take you to that next level, that's going to make you a little bit happier, whatever that is to give more, is to be more, is to do more, whatever that looks like for a person.
Yeah, and I know, like in your book, you talk about being crazy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of like this example. I mean, it's a very easy example. You talk about even when it came to like your test taking, you had somebody who believed in you. Mm-hmm. That said, hey, your psychology teacher, and I might be jumping ahead in the chapters, but she said, I see something in you, Eric. And she said, instead of you doing multiple choice, I'm going to give you...
Oh, yeah, in college,
Yeah. But you also shared another example in chapter 1, and that's what we're focusing on today is chapter 1. You also talked about another person believing in you, and that was your football coach.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about that. What's the power in someone believing in you?
Well, yeah, I mean, it was a whole group of them. I mean, it was like a village that had to come around me, but, one in particular really just put his life into me, and I've had other people like that since, and I've been very fortunate. But he just, he saw that potential in me, and he developed that potential, and he wouldn't settle for mediocre in me. Mm-hmm. And I think the biggest contribution he made to my life, several of them. I mean, I still get together with the guy. I mean, I just absolutely love the man. But every time I'm with him, I feel like I can get better. Yeah. Like, we don't talk about it. We just kind of reminisce when we do get together now. But I feel like, well, man, what's the next level? Right? I got to tell him. I got to tell him what that next level is. But it's just he saw in me what I couldn't see yet. And, he pushed me to do that. And one of the last full games that I actually played in my career, he was there. The game prior, I had tore my ACL and MCL, and we were going into another championship game. It was it was just I think we were in the quarterfinals that moved us to the semifinals. The quarterfinal game, I tore my ACL and MCL. Ended up back in the locker room that next Monday, feeling sorry for myself, moping around, really just writing everything off because I just felt like, I was so wrapped up in football that I felt like my whole life had come to an end. Mm-hmm. Just really moping around. And I'm in the trainer's room right before practice. And he looked at me and he said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, nothing." He's like, "You're just going to sit there and feel sorry for yourself then?" I said, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Wrap it up, get dressed, and get out on the field." And it was that mindset. Now, I played that next game with that torn. wasn't as fast, wasn't as quick. That knee was wrapped up like nobody's business in it, you know. But what I got out of that years later was the mindset, the resolve to keep going forward. You know, I'm down, I'm out. You know, it sucked, and we lost that game. But it was the mindset around that. He believed that I could do it, and it was going onto the field even only maybe 70%. I mean, I couldn't cut or anything. I just had that knee, and being a running back and everything is kind of difficult with that. But I mean, he that was the belief that we could do it, and regardless, we were going into that war together as a team, and believing that we could overcome that.
And do you think that was just a blind spot for you, or do you think you needed somebody from the outside looking in saying, Eric, I believe in you?
Well, I mean, I think we all need that.
Yeah.
I mean, I just see it in our coaching and what it can do, and sometimes I take it for granted now that when I do coaching either on the phone or via Zoom or Skype or just individually with people, when you put effort into somebody and tell them and encourage them on their ideas, and don't let them, when you see that talent in them, that unconsciously brings it out in themselves, and one is cool because you get to see them develop, but I do think we need somebody that will go the extra mile to believe in us, to invest in us, and to tell us, hey, look, you've got potential in you. You know, get out there and get it done. And somebody just to tell us in love, confrontationally, that look, go out and do it. You know, you're that person. I'm gonna be rough on you right now, like my coach did with me that time. Stop moping around. Stop doing what everybody else would do in that situation, and go out and make something happen. And what's funny about that question, Zach, is that's how the book happened. I had this book done, and it was done. It sat for a year. The manuscript sat for a year. And it was another person that's near and dear in my life, a mentor to me, who's been a mentor to me for a decade now. And he's 30 years my elder. And he made sure that book happened. And every time we met, where's the book? Where's the book? Where's the book? And I finally got it done. And I was like, okay, check that off the list. Well, no, it's not done yet. Where is the actual book?
Publish the book. Yeah. Publish the book.
Right. And, he just saw it through to the end, and I really needed that kick in the rear end, because it was a big fear. Yeah. Like, what if I say something, nobody listens to it? It wasn't about that. It was about overcoming that fear and just keep going and keep going and keep going. And now, we're editing the second one. I'm halfway through the third one, and they're regardless of anybody reads it or not. Right. Yeah. And I believe people will. Right. It just needs to get out there. That's the gift, that I have, and people need to hear those ideas, and they need to hear those principles. And if the second and third book are just anything like the first, but if it just changes one life, it's worth it.
It's worth it. And I want to take a pause, because I believe there's people that are listening to this right now that can be fallen into two different buckets. People who haven't been invested in, and people who have been invested in, and we kind of touched on both of those. Yeah. If you're somebody that hasn't been invested in, the greatest thing you could ever do is just ask somebody, hey, that's who I want to be one day, that's where I want to go. Find that one person and say, I'll do whatever it takes for you to coach me. Yeah. Even if you have to pay money, do what it takes to go to that next level. But there's people who have been invested in that have went to the next level, say someone like you. It's always good to give back. Absolutely. Always good to give back, because there's someone that was in your position at one time that needs a helping hand. Right. So if you're in one of those two buckets, man, you need somebody who invests in your life. Find that person, and you found yourself at that place. It's time for you to give back. Yeah. I feel like that's the greatest value someone could ever have. It's not what you can get, it's what you can give. Yeah.
And there's a good story around this, and I know it's off our outline here, but this whole idea of paying it forward. Yeah. That football coach that invested that time in me and gave, that time. I mean, this guy would pick me up in the summer because I didn't have the transportation.
This guy would buy you cleats, right? You told me.
Yeah, he bought me my senior pair of cleats that that I kept. I mean, for years. But what's ironic about that, and you know part of this story, but what is so ironic about that is he put all that effort in me, and then I guess it would have been how many years later? 25 or 26 years later. A young man walks into a group, a leadership group that I'm leading, and I just invested in this guy, right? I just kept investing. I didn't know his background, and one day he showed up early to the class. We're 6 months into this leadership class, right? And we start talking about more personal stuff because he came early. He's like, "Where are you from?" And I told him where I was from, and not many people know where that place is, and he's like, "Oh, I know where that place is." I'm like, "Well, okay, right? Like, you just gave me lip service. Like, tell me how you know where it's." He's like, "My uncle teaches there."
Wow.
And I was like, "Okay, really?" And then the next sentence that came out of his mouth without me asking anything else was, "Yeah, he was the football coach here." I'm like, "Whoa, that's getting weird." And I'm like, "It can't be."
Yeah.
This young man who I had been pouring out into and mentoring was the nephew of the coach that poured into me. I mean, it is just, I was so, I think I freaked him out. I got so excited because he didn't realize that how much this guy, his uncle, had poured into me. And I didn't know unconsciously. I was just pouring into him. And it was, so his uncle, that was the coach that poured into me. And now I'm pouring into this guy.
Kid.
And it's so amazing.
That's
to
incredible.
see that just paying it forward. I don't think his uncle said, "Well, maybe someday he'll pour into one of my nephews." That was, because his nephew wasn't even born in him, as this young man's only, in his early 20s. Just one thing that, a side note there, of really paying it forward, and how, if you give, you're going to get it back tenfold later on.
Yeah.
Just another great story of that. But it's also a great point of, it's okay to be crazy like that. Because it does, it just, in a good way, crazy, because it comes back and you get back that crazy later, the good kind of crazy.
The good kind of crazy. Yeah. So as we kind of wrap up, can you give us some of your concluding statements, something that we can, the podcast listeners can go back and say, okay, here's 4 to 5 things that really.
Yeah. So a couple here, find your why. I believe most everybody wants to be better than just average, and there's room for us all to be better than mediocre. So let's do it. Change takes work. Number 2, change takes work. So put in the work and be the change you want to see. Don't be the change you already are. Like, you can't change that way. Just don't get distracted from that. Stay focused on it. Go after your dreams. One of the things that that I wrote here, big dreams call for big people. Get around people who don't put obstacles in your way. That football coach never put an obstacle in my way. It was always, I put the obstacle in there, and he helped get me over that. So get around people who are going to reinforce your dreams and actually make them bigger. And in the last point, cut yourself off from mediocre. And take a look at everything. If there's that craziness in you, again, in the book, we talk about the good crazy, of wanting to be better in whatever areas of life that is. That's what we mean by that. Go out and do it, and cut yourself off from everything that's hindering you, and go after what it is that you want.
That's great. So application, here's some things to think about, and I mentioned it a couple minutes ago. Find those people that can speak into your life and listen to them. Like, you listen to your coach, and now look, you're here, you own a company, you have a wonderful family. I guarantee your coach never thought in a million years that you would be here right now, but he saw something in you, he invested in you, and now look at the fruit of your life because of one man believing in you. Yeah. And if you had somebody believing you growing up, I think the best thing you could ever do is to invest in people. Yeah. You'll never go wrong with investing in people. So I encourage you, wherever you're at, whatever you're doing, make sure you make this the best day yet, but also invest in people, because the world needs better people. And as we kind of wrap this up, I had this quote come come to mind that kind of sums up going from there to here. Few people end up, let me rephrase that. Everybody will end up somewhere, but few people will end up somewhere on purpose.
Yeah.
Kind of sums up chapter 1 in The Life of Victory, Choosing Love Over Fear. And if you want to get this book, you can go on Amazon. You can also go to our website. This was an Amazon's bestseller. It's an incredible book. I encourage you. I read it. It's changed my life. My wife has read it. It has changed her life. And all the young men that I mentor, I give them this book, and it changes their life. So I encourage you. This is the best $15 investment that you can make this year, or whenever you're listening to this. Say 5 years from now, people are listening. This is the best $15 that you can ever have. And anything else, Eric, that you can think of?
No, I mean, that's, we'll just keep after it. I think we're going to go through the book, so continue to tune in as we do these podcast episodes.
Yes. And thank you all for joining us today. Just some final things. If you guys really liked the book, we're going to be doing chapter 2 next week. But you can go ahead and subscribe, hit that little bell button to get the notifications when it comes. But check out our website at centerforvictory.com, and you can give us a call at 724-462-8383. And whatever you're doing, make sure
it's your best day yet.
It's your best day yet.
Take care.